So Warhammer 40K has got a pair of new Combat Patrol box sets. Let's talk about the Tyranid Assault Brood and the Black Templars, what's in the boxes and whether or not they're looking like a good deal. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about some Monday Warhammer 40k reveals. In this one, Games Workshop seems to have showcased a new couple of Combat Patrol box sets, going alongside some ones they'd already revealed for the Space Wolves and the Grey Knights. These ones appeared to deliver on some rumours I'd seen previously. I had heard and shared that there'd be a new Tyranids Combat Patrol featuring the Barasite and Mortrex, and that was the reason that the old one went away, so that does seem to have been the case. And we have indeed got a Black Templars one with Blade Guard and Sword Brethren. So far we don't know exactly when they're coming out. We only tend to discover that when Games Workshop's actually got their pre-orders going forward. I guess the Black Templar one will come out alongside the Codex, the Tyranid one probably alongside another 40k release, maybe one of the upcoming codexes. In the article they merely say later this year. In any case, let's talk through the Combat Patrols, exactly what's in them, the models and units that are featured in them, and whether or not they're looking like a good deal compared with the previous. First up, we've got the new Combat Patrol Tyranids. Interesting that this one actually seems to have a name under it. It says Combat Patrol Tyranid Assault Brood specifically. The vast majority of them don't actually tend to have a name on the box set. I don't know if this one's just to differentiate it from the Combat Patrol that they released at the start of 10th edition that basically just featured Leviathan models. Unless anything major changes, it likely will be $170, £100 or €130, the same as the rest of the Combat Patrol box sets. And this one features the Parasite and Mortrex to lead it, 10 Gene Stealers, 3 Tyrant Guard or Hive Guard, and then a Biovore that you could also build as a Pyrovore. As discount deals go, this one's maybe quite nice for the Tyranids in the way that it doesn't directly replace something else. They took down the old Tyranid Combat Patrol box set, but basically informed people should never really have bought that one anyway, due to being able to get the exact same models for far cheaper via the starter sets. It means that this one's just a genuinely new discount deal added into the Tyranid mix, possibly not helpful for everyone, but useful enough for those who like it. Going through the miniatures in the box set, and first up we have the Parasite and Mortrex. This one's the little alien horror that was released for the miniature in 9th edition, just before the big Tyranid refresh. Quite a cool Tyranid model, and a fairly big chunky one as characters go, zooming around the battlefield on its wings and injecting the enemies with its stinger tail to lay some rippers in them. In game, it functions as a lone operative that can move really quite fast at 12 inches, can skirmish with some lighter infantry, and has its signature trick where it does try and inject the enemy infantry with rippers. If it destroys something, you might be able to spawn D3 models all of a sudden, which is pretty fun. Compared with the other Tyranids lone operatives though, I feel like it's a bit overcosted for what it does currently. I would argue that the Lictor, Death Leaper, and Neurolictor all add more to the army compared with this guy, at least at the moment. That's not necessarily always going to be the case for the future though. Next up we have the Gene Stealers. These were Games Workshop's updated sculpt on a classic, coming out at the start of 10th edition. They basically keep the old design but have sharpened up features, a fair bit more motion than the old slightly monoposed ones had, and I feel like they're fairly popular as models go. There's 10 of them in the box set, and they've got a fairly fun and blendy profile. For a Tyranid melee unit, they move forward quite fast at 8 inches with a big scout move, and then hit the enemy with a whole bunch of strength 4 AP2 damage 1 attacks, hitting on a 2+, getting some inbuilt datasheet rerolls, and if they're within synapse range they go up to strength 5, which is just way better against a whole range of different targets. I feel like if you're fielding a squad of 10 of them, it'd be very tempting to take a Broodlord, and they're a bit of a staple in the Vanguard Onslaught. Next up, and the older miniatures from the box set, are the Hive Guard or Tyrant Guard. They're a dual build set of Tyranid elites. The Hive Guard are the ones with the shock cannons and impaler cannons. They were quite strong for a bit in 9th edition, though in general haven't really seen quite so much table time in 10th, and the Tyrant Guard are the bodyguards for the Hive Tyrant and can catch some bullets for them to allow them to advance up the board a little bit more reliably. Miniatures wise, I'd certainly say that they're behind the sharpness of the more recent Tyranid sculpts though, unfortunately, and they do cost quite a lot. In game, here's the profile for the Hive Guard. They recently went down in points cost and made them a little bit more efficient than they were. They're more skewed to defense versus damage, with a big 4 wounds at toughness 7 with a 3+ save per model. Even with the lower points cost though, both they and the Tyrant Guard remain kinda niche. I've really not seen too many of them in strong Tyranid lists for a long time. Though I still argue that neither unit are completely unplayable in casual games. Finally, we've got the Biovore or Pyrovore kit. This was another dual build from the start of 10th edition, and in my opinion really quite a nice update versus the previous Finecast ones. They come with a trio of spore mines as well. They're essentially a walking living artillery piece. The Pyrovores can be handy enough maybe just for cheap placeholder units to do a bit of screening and have a bit of objective control for actions. The Biovores are absolutely top tier for Tyranids at the moment though, usually just one in an army list to spawn out some spore mines, or to completing certain secondaries like engage on all fronts, and they're really nice value for being able to just screen out areas of the board, both to deep strike and preventing enemies advancing as well, which could be a really big deal when getting towards mid-board objectives. Most of the time that's more valuable versus their indirect fire. but if it makes sense to, you could have a sort of Hail Mary attempt just to chip 2 wounds off something if it's going to be absolutely game changing. Putting them all together for the points in the box, these are how much you get at the moment. The Parasites 80 points, the Gene Stealers 150 for a squad of 10, the Hive Guard 90, though the Tyrants are slightly cheaper, and the Biovores 50, though again the Pyrovores slightly cheaper. That means that in the box set you get around about 350 to 370 points in the box set, and that is on the lower end as combat patrols go, not the absolute lowest for things like the Guard and the Abmech, but not a million miles off them, certainly a fair bit behind some of the more recent ones that we've had for the Deity Legion Chaos Marines. For the discount in the box set, these are the current prices for the kits in the set. I feel like the Hive Guard and Tyrant Guard are maybe standout, slightly weirdly pricey miniatures for what you get, particularly for older models. For some reason 3 of them are £50 or $80, rather than the slightly more standard £40 to $60 or so that a bunch of other 3-model elite sets are. They're at least fairly chunky miniatures, but maybe not crazily so. They're on 50mm bases. In any case, adding up the kits, the rough total is around about $230. So compared with buying separately, you save around about 27% of your local currency, which is neither really super high nor super low for 10th edition Combat Patrol box sets. I feel like the majority of them are around about 30, so pretty much the same as that. I'd argue it is a bit low on the plastic side of things compared with some of the box sets though. The Gene Stealer models don't do too badly for plastic for the money, but I'd argue that the Hive Guard, Parasite and Biovore are all a bit expensive in terms of that metric. For comparison for the previous box, it is maybe a bit weird given that it was essentially the Tyranids starter set repackaged in a way that you wouldn't really ever buy unless you are misinformed. Basically you get the exact same miniatures in the box set in the Warhammer 40K starter set, and if you just buy a box of Barb Gaunts entirely separately, you basically wind up paying less money than the previous Tyranid Combat Patrol, and also getting a whole bunch of Space Marines included for free with it. So this one and its counterpart Space Marine box set that's still on sale. Both felt like kind of a slightly deceptive products to me and probably not things they should have been selling in the first place. That being said, for new Tyranid players who didn't have these from the Leviathan box set, the Combat Patrol Tyranids that you can get from the starter box set is perhaps a particularly good deal in relation to the rest. The miniatures are monopose, but it gets you around about 460 points worth of models in game. If you split the box with a Space Marine player, it's a theoretical discount of around about 65% compared with buying the miniatures separately, which is just kind of astronomically bigger than the vast majority of Combat Patrols out there. So at least in terms of numbers metrics, the starter set Combat Patrol is likely to outcompete the new one. For reaction to this one on the internet, it seems like it's overall been mixed. Some people genuinely like it and are keen to get one. A lot of people dislike. It definitely doesn't seem like a slam dunk, but looks like it's going to be usable to at least some people. For the miniatures, the majority of them are really quite nice quality recent ones. The Parasites, the Gene Stealers and the Biovore. It's just the Hive Guard and Tyrant Guard that are far older, and personally I find them a bit less exciting miniatures. The unit choices themselves maybe feel like they're going for a bit more of an expansion Tyranid set as opposed to a core choices starter set. Most of them feel just maybe a little bit more peripheral to the more standard Tyranid mainline unit offerings. It's maybe quite nice that it's got entirely separate miniatures from the current starter set though, as it means that you have 2 different Tyranids deals that have no overlap that can get you a whole bunch of space bogs on the board. For gameplay purposes, the Gene Stealers and the Biovore are both pretty top tier units in their own right for Tyranids, particularly the Gene Stealers in the Vanguard Onslaught, and the Biovore is about as auto-include as you can get for one at least. Both the Parasite and the Hive Guard and Tyrant Guard are kind of more mid really, and maybe say not so unusably bad that you can't make good use of them casually. I just wouldn't expect to be seeing them running around in plenty of tournament lists. The overall value feeling, I'd say it's medium, a bit light on the plastic and not the highest discount in the world. I can't really see it being the sort of box set that many people would want to get more than once that could be useful for some people. And maybe it does feel like it's got a few slightly unusual things, like say if you do build the Hive Tyrant Guard, then you'd want a Hive Tyrant to go with, and the Gene Stealers probably want a Broodlord. Let me know your thoughts on the box set though down in the comments below. Before we move on to the Black Templar set, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in ObjectiveMarkers.com. They're a slightly newer hobby company based in the UK, whose thing it is to make some fashion-specific objective markers, now shipping both to the UK and the USA. Their main offering are these clear silicon objective markers, quite common sights for people who play 40k regularly to have some of these. They have a 40mm area marked out in the middle that's supposed to be the main objective marker, and then the 3-inch scoring zone that's basically pre-measured out for you so you can very, very easily see which units are on an objective and which units aren't. I quite enjoyed the look and feel of them when they sent me a few. They've got a whole bunch of different designs for these. For all the all-consuming Xenos players out there, the Space Swarm ones could be fairly on point. The usual prices for these are £25 for 6 of them, or $35 US. And then they come in a whole bunch of different designs, plenty of ones that could be appropriate enough for various Imperial factions out there, and also ones that are nice enough for Twisted Force of Chaos or Xenos. Early orders of these get a few dice thrown in, done as a freebie to promote their launch. They also have some Terrain Brewing based things as well. In any case, there'll be links down in the video description, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this one. Let's move on to the Crusading Knights of the Black Templars though. In recent weeks, Games Workshop have shown off the Crusade Ancient and the Execrator Chaplain for them. We knew there was likely a Combat Patrol box set coming for them, though Games Workshop haven't said anything about a Battle Force box set yet, so currently we don't know whether or not those characters are going to be coming out there before anything else. This one's just called Combat Patrol Black Templars, so it doesn't get a specific name or anything. Again, likely priced at the $170 mark or £100. And in this one, there's going to be an Emperor's Champion, one squad of 10 Primaris Crusaders, a squad of 5 Sword Brethren, and a squad of Blade Guard Veterans. Seems like that rumour I heard about the Blade Guard was on point. From this one, it doesn't look like there's any Black Templar upgrade sprue in this one. There was one in the previous one, though I can't see any of the parts used in this. I'd guess that Games Workshop would have showcased it if they were including it in the box set, but feel free to let me know if I missed anything. I would have guessed that they would have talked about the upgrade sprue if it had happened to be in the box. This one will almost certainly launch alongside the Codex, given that there's no new miniatures in it, and hopefully that's not going to be too far away. We've got a few Knightly Codexes outstanding with the Imperial Knights, Black Templars and Grey Knights. Going through the units, we've got the Emperor's Champion. This one voted as the single best looking Black Templar miniature in my recent poll. Thoroughly iconic, holding the black sword aloft, and with practical power armour ready for duelling. I feel like it's a pretty excellent miniature for a new player, though it does mean that it's maybe not super helpful to have him in a discount box set, as it means that you're less likely to get 2 of them, as you can't field 2 Emperor's Champions. I have seen him being a base for conversions for all sorts of other miniatures though. It's quite an adaptable miniature if you did want to change him into something else. Currently he's a bit of a beast in game, only 75 points for a mighty melee stat line, a bunch of strength 8 and damage 3 precision attacks, and a +1 to wound against character units, so really quite punchy there for a cheap cost. Next up we've got the Crusader squad. Pretty nice to have the battle line troops in the Combat Patrol box set. I feel like that's a good choice. It would have been a shame if there weren't any. You get 4 neophytes and 6 initiates, and feels like they're almost always going to be a mainstay unit for the army. Perhaps likely to get more attention than most if they happen not to be fielded very often. As base troops for a chapter go, I feel like they're particularly well done. Really quite a lot of theme with their flowing tabards, and weapons chained to their hands and things. For their stat line, they can put out a fair bit of melee threat between power fists and chainswords. They have perhaps a surprising amount of attacks, and they can be fairly durable if accompanied by characters with feel no pains. Obviously any rules could change in a big way in the Codex, which we haven't got yet. I would say the points cost at the moment maybe puts them as kind of alright as opposed to massively standouts. Then we've got the Sword Brethren, very nicely executed Black Templars elites with a bunch of fancy power weapons. There's at least a fair few assembly options on the kit, and I feel like these were particularly well liked. They certainly feel like ones that you could use to represent characters as well if you'd like to. In game they've got a 3 wound stat line, hit fairly hard with a bunch of power weapons, and have a rather powerful melee buffing rule when they can get +1 damage and confer that to attached characters, so pretty brutal melee there. Charging into combat with Hellbrechts, there's very little that they can't destroy if you throw a command point or 2 their way in Righteous Crusaders. I'd consider them pretty strong currently. Finally, we've got the Blade Guard Veterans, the only non-Black Templar unique units in the box. As a generic Space Marine kit though, I feel like they're about as inoffensive as it gets. They're pretty on theme for the Black Templars, with some nice shields, reliquaries, and some fancy power weapons. They look very Space Knight in themselves, and again in that recent model looks video they were voted as people's single favourite Space Marine miniature. A really good balance between sleek Primaris and the Space Marine Space Knight sort of aesthetic that they have. In game they're solidly usable for 80 points, they were a bit overcosted for a bit, but now are solid. A bunch of strength 5 damage 2 attacks, in general they need something to help them out, punch up against tough stuff, so things like a lieutenant or any lance stratagems and things are particularly appreciated. I feel like gameplay wise they might compete for the Sword Brethren's role though, which maybe is a little bit less ideal for Black Templars. Does sort of feel like you're getting 2 squads that are angling for the exact same battlefield role. For the points in the box they do a bit better than the Tyranids, 445 points in this box, so around about 2.6 points per dollar, which I'd say is on the slightly higher end of combat patrols, but not by much. They're still a bit behind some of the more recent ones like the Space Wolves and the Deity Legion codexes for the most part, as ever points could change in the codex though. Discount wise, if you add up all the sets, they're around $230, so that would equal about a quarter discount, compared with if you bought literally all of them individually. Again, maybe a tiny bit on the lower end of things, but not really out of the realms of Games Workshop's norm with 30% discount on Combat Patrol box sets. This one is assuming that they're not surprising us with an upgrade sprue in the box or anything like that. The box set this will replace will be this one. This one's the one with the Templar Crusaders, the Impulsor, the upgrade sprue, 5 Intercessors, and a Marshal. As Combat Patrols went, I feel like this was useful enough. The Impulsor, not too bad as you could stick a multi-melter on it, which felt like it was a bit more on theme. Maybe the Intercessors being a touch on the redundant side when you've already got troops. I feel like having a box set with both Sword Brethren and Crusader squads inside it is pretty handy. Numbers wise, it looks like there's a few more points in the new box versus the old, but there's not a crazy amount of difference. Nice to see that actually going the right way as opposed to a few combat patrols in 10th edition that have gone down. And then for the discount in the box set, it depends on how much you care about the upgrade sprue. I feel like they always feel a bit cheeky to add in at full price value, but the Templar one was a better one compared with most of them. I split the difference and included it but at half price, and if you do that then it's around about the same sort of price of the things in the box set compared with the last. Overall, at least numbers wise, it doesn't feel so enormously different. Overall for this one, I feel like reaction was maybe a bit more broadly positive as opposed to mixed. The biggest criticism might be the named character in the box set for the Emperor's Champion, which is a detractor to getting multiple copies of it. I do wonder how many people would really have been getting multiple copies and have multiple marshals on the field at the same time. And the Emperor's Champion is definitely a miniature that you could sell or kit bash into other stuff. The miniatures themselves are all relatively new and a good skew towards the unique Black Templar models, which is good to see. And the Blade Guard are nice enough in themselves, fairly on theme, and get you a fair bunch of other spare parts that you could kit bash more with if you wanted. In game, they're all usable enough. I'd probably rate the Emperor's Champion and the Sword Brethren as the strongest units in the box set currently, but that could all be turned on its head in the Codex, of course. And bear in mind that gameplay-wise, there's a good chance that Black Templar unique characters won't be able to attach to the Blade Guard veterans if they follow the same sort of slightly annoying pattern that they did with the Space Wolves. For the overall value feeling, the discount isn't huge. It does feel a little bit light on the plastic to me. There's plenty of fancy Elite Space Marines in here, but it's still ultimately around about 20 normal-sized Space Marine models, which doesn't feel huge for $170 or £100, but overall at least they're models that I think most people would desire quite a lot. It feels like a very solid box set for new players out there, maybe less so for existing players who already have multiple copies of the units or already have an Emperor's Champion. Again, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on the box down in the comments below. Otherwise, they also took time in the article to showcase the combat patrols they've already revealed. The Space Wolves one was generally quite positively received. We don't know when that one's going to be along yet. That one's got the Terminators, Bloodclaws, Battle Leader, and the Wolfen as the older models. Certainly a massive update compared with the last though, with its fairly generic Primaris. I feel like this one's going to be a popular one when it comes out. I'm sure there's plenty of people holding back on the Terminators to get them here. The Grey Knights one was a bit on the other end of the spectrum though. Not so enormously dissimilar to the last one, but swapping out the Dread Knight for the generic Dreadnought, a model that kind of has to be going to Legends at some point if Games Workshop follows up their Primarisification sort of trends, and also swapping a generic Librarian for Castellan Crow has some mixed reaction as well. He's probably the best looking miniature in the Grey Knights range, and one of their only more recent ones, but at the same time he's a unique character that again makes you not want to buy multiple copies of the box set quite so much. Overall, I expect this one to be less popular. It does feel like a downgrade compared with the previous with the Dread Knight in, at least in my opinion. In any case though, let me know your thoughts as to the box sets. What do you like or dislike about them? I'll leave that one for there. And as mentioned earlier, feel free to check out objectivemarkers.com if you do want to have a look over their fancy objective marker style things. I'll leave them links down in the video description, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this. In any case, I'll leave that there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you've been enjoying the videos on the channel, then feel free to subscribe to the Patreon page as well. That's the main thing that keeps the videos coming. Channel patrons certainly get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.